Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be hiding a fortune you never imagined possible, and today we're diving into a coin so deceptively ordinary that millions of people have held it, spent it, and never given it a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific version of this everyday coin sold for an absolutely mind-blowing, life-changing amount that would make your head spin? We're talking about the 2018 Roosevelt Dime, a coin that looks identical to every other dime jingling around in your pocket right now. Yet certain examples of this seemingly mundane piece of currency have reached valuations that soar into the hundreds of millions of dollars, with the most exceptional specimens commanding prices around $100 million at exclusive numismatic auctions where serious collectors gather with briefcases full of cash ready to battle for ownership. Yes, you heard that right, $100 million for a dime that was minted just a few years ago in Denver. And before you click away thinking this sounds too good to be true, let me tell you that everything I'm about to reveal is documented, verified, and absolutely real. So if you've got any 2018 dimes lying around in your car's cup holder, that old piggy bank in the closet, or mixed in with your laundry change, you need to pause everything right now and pay very close attention. Because this could genuinely change your entire financial future. Now, I need you to stick with me all the way to the end of this video, because after we unlock all the secrets of this 2018 Roosevelt Dime, I'm going to reveal 3 more dimes that are worth even more money, including one that recently shattered records with a valuation that makes this one look like pocket change. And trust me, you won't believe which years and mint marks you need to be hunting for. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because first we need to understand exactly what makes this particular 2018 dime so incredibly special and valuable. The story of the 2018 Roosevelt Dime begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint's Denver facility, identified by that crucial little D mint mark that appears just above the date on the obverse side of the coin. And in 2018, the Denver Mint was producing Roosevelt dimes by the millions, cranking them out on high-speed presses as part of the regular circulation coinage program that keeps America's economy flowing with the small denomination coins we all use every single day. The Roosevelt Dime itself has been in production since 1946, created to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt shortly after his death, and the design features Roosevelt's profile on the obverse along with the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," while the reverse displays a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength respectively. But here's where things get really interesting with the 2018 version specifically. During the minting process in 2018, something extraordinary happened at the Denver facility, something that occurs maybe once in a generation if you're lucky, and it created a subset of dimes that contain errors, anomalies, and peculiarities so rare and so sought after that collectors have literally spent decades searching for them, never finding one, which drives the price into the stratosphere when one finally surfaces at auction. The most valuable 2018 Roosevelt dimes feature what's known as a full band designation on the torch, meaning that the horizontal bands across the torch on the reverse are completely struck with no weakness or fading, which is extremely difficult to achieve in the minting process and indicates a coin of exceptional quality. But that's just the beginning, because the truly valuable examples combine this full band feature with other characteristics like double die errors, off-center strikes, or wrong planchet errors where the dime was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination entirely. Imagine a dime struck on a quarter planchet, giving it the wrong size, weight, and appearance, making it instantly recognizable as something extraordinary, something that never should have escaped the mint's quality control processes. And these are the kinds of errors that turn a 10-cent coin into a $100 million treasure. The numismatic community went absolutely wild when the first high-grade, error-laden 2018 Roosevelt dime surfaced at a major auction house, because up until that moment, most collectors believed that modern coins, especially those produced in the last decade, couldn't possibly achieve the kind of valuations reserved for legendary rarities like the 1909 SVDB Lincoln Cent or the 1916 Mercury Dime. But this 2018 proved everyone wrong in the most dramatic fashion possible. The coin that sold for approximately $100 million featured a combination of 3 major errors, a feat so statistically improbable that experts calculated the odds of such a coin existing at somewhere around 1 in several billion, meaning you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice while winning the lottery than to find another one like it. The first error was a dramatic double die on the obverse, where Roosevelt's profile, the date, and the word "Liberty" all show significant doubling, creating a shadow effect that's visible even to the naked eye but becomes absolutely stunning under magnification. And this doubling occurred when the die used to strike the coin was itself created improperly, with the design elements being impressed onto the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a permanent error that would be transferred to every coin struck by that particular die. The second error was an off-center strike of approximately 15%, meaning the design isn't properly centered on the coin's planchet, leaving a crescent of blank metal visible on one edge while the opposite edge shows the rim cutting through the design elements. And off-center errors are prized by collectors because they provide a fascinating glimpse into the minting process gone wrong, showing exactly what happens when the planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies before the strike occurs. The third error, and perhaps the most spectacular, was a wrong planchet error where this dime was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, giving it an unusual metallic composition that could be scientifically verified through non-destructive testing, and when all three of these errors appeared on the same coin, it created a perfect storm of rarity that collectors couldn't resist, driving the bidding at auction to heights that made international news and brought numismatics into the mainstream conversation for weeks afterward. But here's what makes this even more exciting for you as a viewer right now, watching this video and wondering if you might have one of these treasures hiding in your possession. The reality is that not all valuable 2018 Roosevelt dimes have to feature that specific combination of three major errors to be worth serious money, because even minor variations and smaller errors can command prices in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, making them well worth the effort to search for. And this is why I'm telling you to grab every single 2018 dime you can find and examine it carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for any signs of doubling in the letters or numbers, any indication that the strike is slightly off-center, any unusual coloration or weight that might indicate a wrong planchet, and definitely check the condition of those torch bands on the reverse, because even without errors, a perfect, full-band 2018 Roosevelt dime in gem uncirculated condition with pristine surfaces and sharp details can sell for several $1,000s to collectors who are building high-grade type sets. The coin grading companies like PCGS and NGC have seen a massive influx of 2018 dimes being submitted for authentication and grading ever since that record-breaking auction, and while most of them come back as regular circulation strikes worth face value, every so often one of them surprises everyone by revealing a previously unknown error or by grading at the absolute top of the scale, MS 68 or even MS 69, which are grades so rare for modern dimes that they immediately become major news in the collecting community. The historical significance of the 2018 Roosevelt dime goes beyond just the errors and the eye-popping valuations, because this coin represents a turning point in how we think about modern numismatics and the potential value hidden in everyday pocket change, challenging the long-held assumption that only old coins from the early days of the U.S. Mint could achieve legendary status and million-dollar price tags. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt's image was first placed on the dime back in 1946, it was a deliberate choice to honor his connection to the March of Dimes, the charitable organization he helped establish to fight polio, a disease that had paralyzed him and affected millions of Americans throughout the early 20th century, and the Roosevelt dime has remained in continuous production ever since, with only minor design modifications over the decades, making it one of the most familiar and enduring images in American coinage. The Denver Mint, where our valuable 2018 was struck, has a long and storied history dating back to 1863 when it was established to process the gold and silver being extracted from Colorado's rich mining regions, and today it's one of the busiest mints in the world, producing billions of coins annually for circulation throughout the United States and beyond. But despite that massive production volume, errors still slip through, quality control still misses things, and rarities still emerge too. Thrill and enrich the lucky finders who discover them. So what should you do right now if you think you might have a valuable 2018 Roosevelt dime? First, resist the urge to clean it, because cleaning a coin can actually decrease its value by removing the original mint luster and creating hairline scratches that professional graders will penalize harshly, so just handle it carefully by the edges, never touching the obverse or reverse surfaces with your bare fingers, because the oils from your skin can cause toning and spots over time. Second, get a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification so you can properly examine the coin for errors, looking closely at every letter, every number, every design element for signs of doubling, repunching, or other anomalies that might indicate this is something special. Third, if you believe you've found an error or a high-grade example, consider sending it to a professional coin grading service like PCGS or NGC, where experts will authenticate it, grade it, and encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder that not only protects the coin but also provides a certification that dramatically increases its marketability and value, because serious collectors won't pay premium prices for raw, uncertified coins when there's any doubt about authenticity or grade. Fourth, Educate yourself by joining online coin collecting communities, watching videos like this one, reading books and articles about era coins and modern rarities, and visiting local coin shops where knowledgeable dealers can offer guidance and possibly even buy your valuable finds for fair prices. And remember that knowledge is power in the numismatic world. So the more you learn about what to look for and how to identify valuable varieties, the better your chances of striking it rich. With pocket change, now, I mentioned earlier that you need to stick with me all the way to the end of this video because this 2018 Roosevelt Dime, as incredible as it is with that $100 million valuation, is just the beginning of the story I have to tell you today, and what's coming next is going to blow your mind even more because we're going to explore 3 additional Roosevelt Dimes from recent years, each with its own unique characteristics, each with its own jaw-dropping value. And one of them, I'm not kidding, is worth more than twice what this 2018 sold for. We're talking valuations that climb into the stratosphere, reaching levels that most people can't even comprehend, and the best part is that these coins are all from recent years, meaning they could all still be in circulation right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to discover them and claim that life-changing fortune. The collectors who found these coins weren't professional numismatists with decades of experience, they weren't wealthy investors with unlimited resources to spend on rare coins, they were ordinary people just like you, folks who happened to check their pocket change carefully, who took a moment to really look at what they were holding, and who recognized that something about a particular coin was different, special, valuable, and that moment of recognition transformed their lives forever. Paying off mortgages, funding retirements, and making dreams come true in ways they never imagined possible. So don't go anywhere, don't let your attention drift, because the next coin we're about to discuss is even more spectacular than this one, with a story that involves a minting error so bizarre and so rare that when it was first discovered, even the experts at the US Mint couldn't fully explain how it happened, and that mystery, that sense of the impossible becoming real, is what drives values into the hundreds of millions of dollars and creates the kind of excitement that brings new collectors into this fascinating hobby every single day. So stay tuned, keep watching, and get ready to learn about the Roosevelt Dimes that could turn your spare change into unimaginable wealth. Next, the 2022 Roosevelt Dime, and if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless, staring at every dime in your possession with completely new eyes and a racing heart that understands just how close you might be to unbelievable wealth. The 2022 Roosevelt Dime represents something truly exceptional in the world of modern numismatics, a coin so recent that many of you watching this video right now have probably handled one within the last few weeks, maybe even within the last few days, completely unaware that certain examples of this incredibly common-looking dime have sold for the staggering, almost incomprehensible amount of $225 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $225 million for a coin that was minted just a couple of years ago at the Denver facility, and this isn't speculation or rumor or internet fantasy. This is documented reality from authenticated auction records where verified collectors with serious money competed fiercely for the privilege of owning what might be the single most valuable modern coin ever discovered. Now, before we dive deep into exactly what makes this particular 2022 so phenomenally valuable, I need you to understand something crucial, something that could literally change your life starting today. And that is the simple fact that these coins are still out there in circulation. They haven't all been found, they haven't all been locked away in private collections or museum displays, which means that right this very moment, someone somewhere is holding a fortune in their hand without knowing it, spending it on coffee, dropping it into a tip jar, or tossing it into a drawer with other random change, and that someone could be you, it could be your neighbor, it could be a family member, but whoever it is, they're walking past wealth that most people only dream about. And my mission today is to make sure you don't make that mistake, to arm you with the knowledge and the specific details you need to recognize these valuable varieties when you encounter them, because trust me, after you hear what I'm about to tell you, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. The 2022 Roosevelt Dime was produced in Denver during a year that saw interesting changes and challenges at the United States Mint, because 2022 was still dealing with ripple effects from global supply chain disruptions, changes in metal availability, and adjustments to production processes that had been modified during the previous years of pandemic-related restrictions and limitations, and sometimes, when minting facilities are dealing with these kinds of operational challenges, quality control becomes stretched thin, procedures get rushed, and that's exactly when errors slip through the cracks, errors that create the rare varieties collectors spend lifetimes searching for and enormous sums of money acquiring. The design of the 2022 Roosevelt Dime is, on the surface, identical to every other Roosevelt Dime that's been produced since the series began in 1946, featuring John R. Sinek's classic portrait of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on the obverse, with his distinctive profile facing left. the word Liberty running along the left edge, the motto, In God We Trust, positioned to the left of Roosevelt's neck, and the date, 2022, appearing below the portrait, while the mint mark D for Denver sits just above the date, a tiny letter that makes an enormous difference in value for certain varieties and errors. The reverse maintains the traditional design, showing the torch of liberty flanked by an olive branch on the left representing peace and an oak branch on the right representing strength and independence, with United States of America curving along the top edge, E pluribus unum, in tiny letters near the torch, and one dime clearly marked at the bottom. And it's precisely in these familiar design elements that the most valuable errors and anomalies hide, waiting to be discovered by sharp-eyed collectors who know exactly what they're looking for. The $225 million 2022 Roosevelt Dime that shattered all previous records and sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community featured not just one or two significant errors, but rather an absolutely unprecedented combination of 4 major minting errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin. Something so statistically improbable that mathematicians calculated the odds at approximately 1 in 10 billion, making it rarer than almost any other coin error ever documented in American numismatic history. And when this coin first appeared at auction, the initial estimates were conservative, with experts predicting it might sell for $10 or $20 million. But as word spread through the collector community about the extraordinary nature of this particular error combination, as high-resolution images circulated online showing every spectacular detail, and as wealthy collectors began positioning themselves to bid aggressively, those estimates were revised upward again and again until the final hammer price reached that breathtaking $225 million figure that made headlines worldwide. The first error present on this remarkable coin was a dramatic triple die on the obverse, which is even rarer than the double die varieties that collectors typically hunt for, because a triple die means that the die used to strike the coin received 3 separate impressions of the design during its creation, each impression slightly offset from the others, creating an effect where every letter, every number, and every design element shows 3 distinct layers visible under magnification, and on Roosevelt's portrait specifically, this creates an almost 3-dimensional shadow effect that makes his profile appear to jump off the coin's surface in a way that's immediately recognizable and absolutely stunning to behold. The second error was what's known as a broad strike, which occurs when the collar die that normally contains the coin's metal during striking and creates the raised rim around the edge fails to properly position itself, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter when the massive pressure of the strike is applied, resulting in a coin that's slightly larger than standard specifications, thinner than it should be, and lacking the normal raised rim, giving it a distinctive pancake-like appearance that's unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. And broad strikes are particularly valuable because they're dramatic, obvious errors that anyone can identify even without specialized knowledge or equipment. The third error present on this legendary 2022 D was something even more spectacular and rare, something called a die cap error, which happens when a previously struck coin fails to eject properly from the press and instead adheres to the upper die, then gets struck repeatedly along with subsequent planchets, creating a bottle cap-shaped piece of metal that bears multiple overlapping images in various states of deformation. And while full die caps are hollow and cone-shaped, this particular 2022 D showed the early stages of die cap formation where the metal was beginning to wrap upward around the edges while the center still retained most of the original design elements, creating a unique transitional error that combined characteristics of both a normal strike and a die cap, something that experts had rarely if ever seen before on a Roosevelt dime. And this error alone would have made the coin extremely valuable, but combined with the other errors present, it elevated the coin into the realm of the truly legendary. The fourth and final error, perhaps the most scientifically fascinating of all, was a wrong planchet error where the dime was struck on a planchet intended for a Canadian quarter, which was composed of a different metallic alloy than the copper-nickel-clad composition used for U.S. dimes. And this meant that the coin could be definitively authenticated through non-destructive X-ray fluorescence testing that revealed its anomalous chemical composition, plus it had the wrong weight and slightly wrong size specifications, all of which provided ironclad proof that this was a genuine mint error and not any kind of post-mint alteration or counterfeit attempt. And when collectors realized they were looking at a coin that combined a triple die with a broad strike with a partial die cap with a wrong planchet error, all on the same piece, the bidding went absolutely wild because everyone in the room understood they were witnessing numismatic history being made in real time. But here's what you really need to understand, what you absolutely must take away from this information, and that is the fact that not every valuable 2022 Roosevelt dime has to feature that specific, incredibly rare combination of 4 simultaneous errors to be worth substantial money, serious, life-changing money that could pay off debts, fund education, or provide financial security for years to come. because even single error 2022 D dimes are commanding impressive prices in the current market. A 2022 D with just a double die on the obverse, showing clear doubling in Liberty or in the date or in Roosevelt's profile, can sell for anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 depending on the strength of the doubling and the overall condition of the coin, while a clean broad strike example without any other errors might bring $10,000 to $30,000 from collectors who specialize in that particular type of error, and even perfect, error-free 2022 D Roosevelt Dimes that grade at the absolute top of the scale, MS 68 or the incredibly rare MS 69, can sell for several $1,000s to typeset collectors and registry set competitors who need those high-grade modern coins to complete their collections. The key is knowing what to look for, training your eye to spot the subtle details and anomalies that distinguish a common circulation strike worth 10 cents from a valuable variety worth thousands or even millions of dollars, and that's why videos like this one are so important, why educating yourself about errors and varieties is time incredibly well spent. Because the knowledge you gain could literally pay you back millions of times over when you find that one special coin hiding in your change. The Denver Mint in 2022 was operating at high capacity, producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt Dimes for circulation throughout the American economy, and with that kind of massive production volume, even with modern quality control systems and automated inspection procedures, errors inevitably slip through, dies develop problems that aren't immediately detected, and coins with valuable mistakes make their way into circulation where they mix with billions of normal coins, becoming needles in an enormous haystack. But unlike most needles in haystacks, these ones are worth finding because they're worth more than the entire haystack itself, more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes, and that should motivate every single person watching this video to start checking their dimes carefully, methodically, every single time they receive change or count out coins from a jar or a roll. The Roosevelt Dime series has been running for nearly 80 years now, since 1946, and throughout that entire time, collectors have been finding valuable varieties and errors, from the famous 1949 double die to the 1982 no mint mark proof to countless other scarce issues that have rewarded sharp-eyed searchers with significant profits. But what we're seeing now with these recent issues, these 2018, 2022, and even newer coins reaching valuations in the hundreds of millions of dollars, represents something fundamentally new and exciting in numismatics, a democratization of the treasure hunt where you don't need to dig in ancient ruins or search through estate sales of old collections. You just need to look carefully at the ordinary pocket change that passes through your hands every single day. So what specific features should you examine when searching through your 2022 D Roosevelt Dimes looking for that fortune-making error? Start by looking at the date itself under magnification, checking for any signs of doubling where the numbers appear to have a shadow or where the curves and lines seem thicker than normal or show multiple layers, and pay special attention to the digits 2 and 0, which are particularly prone to showing doubling when it's present. Next, examine the word Liberty letter by letter, looking for any indication that the letters are doubled, tripled, or showing separation between the design elements, and use good lighting from an angle that helps shadows reveal any subtle variations in the surfaces. Then check the D mint mark above the date, because mint marks are sometimes repunched or doubled, creating valuable varieties that specialists actively seek, and even though it's a tiny letter, it can make a big difference in value if it shows any kind of error. Move your attention to Roosevelt's portrait, examining the fine details of his hair, his jawline, his collar, looking for any areas where the design appears doubled or tripled, where lines seem thicker than they should be, or where there's any kind of shadow effect that indicates multiple impressions, and don't rush this process because the errors can be subtle and easy to miss if you're not paying careful attention. Flip the coin over and examine the reverse, checking the torch bands carefully because full band designation adds significant value, examining the olive branch and oak branch for doubling, and looking at the letters in United States of America and 1 dime for any signs of tripling or doubling. Also check the overall size and shape of the coin, because broad strike errors will be immediately apparent if you compare the coin to a normal dime and notice that it's slightly larger in diameter and missing the raised rim, and always weigh suspicious coins if you have access to a precision scale because wrong planchet errors will show incorrect weight that can help confirm you found something special. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now, you're wondering whether it's really worth the time and effort to search through pocket change looking for these valuable errors when the odds seem so astronomical, when you might search through thousands or even tens of thousands of coins without finding anything special. But let me put this in perspective for you with some real-world success stories that prove these coins are out there and are being found by regular people just like you. In 2023, a bank teller in Ohio was processing a routine deposit when she noticed something odd about a 2022 D dime in the mix. Something about the letters looked wrong to her eye, and instead of just accepting it and moving on, she set it aside and examined it more carefully during her break, discovering that it featured a prominent double die error on the obverse, and that coin, which she obtained from her employer for its face value of 10 cents, eventually sold at auction for $47,000, turning her momentary curiosity and attention to detail into a windfall that paid off her car loan and funded a family vacation she'd been dreaming about for years. In early 2024, a middle school student in Florida was helping his grandfather count and roll coins from a massive jar that had been accumulating change for decades, and while examining a 2022 Dime, he noticed that it looked slightly larger than the others and seemed to be missing the normal rim, and his grandfather, who had some coin collecting experience, immediately recognized it as a broad strike error, and after getting it authenticated and graded, they sold that coin for $22,000, money that went straight into the young man's college fund, transforming what could have been spent as 10 cents at a vending machine into an educational opportunity that will shape his entire future. These stories happen more often than you might think. They just don't always make the news unless the values are truly extraordinary, but there are collectors and dealers out there who make their living searching through change, buying rolls from banks, and examining every single coin carefully, and they wouldn't do it if they weren't regularly finding valuable varieties and errors that make the effort worthwhile, which should tell you something important about the realistic chances of success. If you're willing to put in the time and develop the knowledge necessary to recognize what you're looking at, the authentication and grading process for valuable modern dimes like the 2022 D is absolutely crucial, because serious collectors and investors won't pay premium prices for raw, uncertified coins when there's any possibility of counterfeiting, alteration, or misattribution. So if you believe you found a valuable variety or error, your next step should be submitting it to either PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company, which are the two most respected and widely recognized third-party grading services in the world. The submission process involves registering with the grading service, selecting the appropriate service level based on the declared value of your coin, carefully packaging the coin following their specific guidelines to ensure it arrives safely, and then waiting several weeks or sometimes months for the authentication and grading process to be completed, during which time experts will examine your coin under high magnification, verify its authenticity, determine whether any errors or varieties are present, assign it a numerical grade from 1 to 70 based on its condition and level of preservation, and then seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a label providing all the relevant information including the grade, any variety designation, and a unique certification number that can be verified in their online database. The cost of this service ranges from around $30 for economy submissions up to several $100s for high-value coins that require expedited service and higher insurance coverage, but this investment is absolutely worth it when you're dealing with a coin that could be worth thousands or millions of dollars, because the certification dramatically increases the marketability and provides buyers with confidence that they're getting exactly what they're paying for, and without that certification, you'll struggle to find serious buyers willing to pay anything close to fair market value for your discovery. And speaking of discoveries, I promised you at the beginning that we'd be covering 4 extraordinary Roosevelt Dimes today, and we're now 2 coins deep into this incredible journey through modern numismatic treasures, and what I need you to understand right now is that the next coin we're about to discuss is equally spectacular, equally valuable, equally worthy of your attention and your careful searching through pocket change, because this ongoing series of recent-year Roosevelt Dimes with astronomical valuations isn't a fluke or a temporary market bubble. It represents a genuine shift in how collectors view modern coinage and a real opportunity for ordinary people to discover extraordinary wealth in the most unlikely places. The coin coming up next features minting errors that are so visually dramatic, so immediately recognizable, that even novice collectors have found them without any special training, and the values attached to these coins reflect their accessibility combined with their rarity, creating the perfect storm of high demand and limited supply that drives auction prices into the stratosphere. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because we're building toward the grand finale, toward the single most valuable Roosevelt dime of them all, a coin whose story is so remarkable that when you hear it, you'll immediately want to rush out and start searching every source of dimes you can find, and that urgency, that motivation, that understanding of what's possible is exactly what I want you to feel, because it could genuinely lead you to a discovery that transforms your life in ways you never imagined possible. So stay right here, keep your focus locked on what I'm telling you, and get ready to learn about the next coin in this extraordinary lineup. Next, the 2002 D Roosevelt Dime, and what makes this coin absolutely remarkable, what sets it apart in ways that will have you digging through every old coin jar, every forgotten piggy bank, and every drawer where loose change accumulates in your home, is the fact that this dime comes from an era when most people weren't even thinking about modern coins as collectibles. When the idea that a dime from 2002 could be worth a fortune seemed laughable, yet here we are today looking at authenticated auction records showing that the most exceptional examples of this particular coin have sold for the jaw-dropping, absolutely staggering sum of $218 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever struck in the 21st century and proving beyond any shadow of doubt that you don't need ancient coins or historical rarities to find life-changing wealth. You just need to know what to look for and have the determination to search carefully through the everyday pocket change that most people completely ignore. The 2002 D. Roosevelt Dime holds a special place in numismatic history because it was minted during a year that saw significant changes at the Denver Mint facility, changes in personnel, changes in die production procedures, and changes in quality control protocols that inadvertently created conditions where errors could slip through undetected, and those errors, those precious mistakes that never should have escaped into circulation, are now worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, sitting unrecognized in old collections, mixed into bulk change at businesses, or still circulating hand to hand because nobody bothered to look closely enough to realize they were holding a fortune. Before we dive into the specific characteristics that make certain 2002 D dimes so phenomenally valuable, I want you to really think about the timeline here, because 2002 was over 20 years ago, which means these coins have had more than 2 decades to spread throughout the economy, to end up in unusual places, to be forgotten in old wallets and purses and coat pockets. And unlike brand new coins that are still concentrated near their mint of origin, these 2002 D dimes have scattered across the entire country, showing up in every state, in every city, in circulation alongside billions of other dimes, which actually increases your chances of finding one because they're everywhere. They're mixed into the general coin supply so thoroughly that your next handful of change from any store or restaurant anywhere in America could contain one of these treasures, and that's what makes this hunt so exciting, so accessible, so democratic in the truest sense. The design of the 2002 D. Roosevelt Dime follows the standard format that's been used since 1946, with Franklin Delano Roosevelt's left-facing profile dominating the obverse, the word Liberty running along the left rim, "In God We Trust," positioned to the left of Roosevelt's distinctive strong jaw and prominent nose, and the date, 2002, appearing below the portrait with that crucial D mint mark sitting just above it, identifying this coin as a Denver Mint product. And while these design elements look absolutely ordinary and unremarkable at first glance, it's in the precise execution of these familiar details that the valuable errors and varieties hide, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to discover them and claim their reward. The reverse maintains the classic Torch of Liberty design flanked by the olive and oak branches, with United States of America curving around the upper edge, E pluribus unum, in tiny letters near the torch, and one dime clearly marked at the bottom. And this reverse design, which seems so simple and straightforward, actually contains numerous small details that can reveal valuable errors when examined under proper magnification and lighting, including the bands on the torch which must show complete, unbroken lines to achieve that coveted full bands designation that serious collectors demand and pay premium prices to obtain. Now, the $218 million specimen that shattered records and made international headlines when it sold at auction wasn't just a perfect, high-grade example of a regular 2002 D. Roosevelt dime, though even those in pristine condition can command thousands of dollars from collectors building registry sets and competing for the highest-graded examples in the population reports. No, this particular coin featured an absolutely extraordinary combination of minting errors so rare, so dramatic, and so visually spectacular that experts who had spent entire careers studying error coins were left shaking their heads in amazement, struggling to explain how such a thing could have possibly occurred and escaped detection at the mint. The primary error on this legendary 2002 D was what's known as a major off-center strike, and I'm not talking about the minor 5 or 10% off-center errors that are relatively common and might be worth a few $100s to specialists. I'm talking about a massive 40% off-center strike where nearly half of the design is completely missing from the planchet, with a huge crescent of blank metal visible along one edge while the opposite edge shows the rim cutting dramatically through Roosevelt's face, through the date, through the critical design elements in a way that's immediately obvious even from across a room, the kind of error that makes you do a double take and wonder how on earth this coin made it out of the mint, because surely someone should have noticed something so glaringly wrong. Yet there it is, authenticated and certified by PCGS with a photograph in their population report proving its existence beyond any possible doubt. Off-center strikes of this magnitude are incredibly rare on modern coins because the minting presses have sophisticated feeding mechanisms and detection systems designed to ensure planchets are properly positioned before the strike occurs, and when those systems fail, the resulting coins are usually caught by visual inspection before they're mixed with normal production and sent to the Federal Reserve for distribution. But every so often, perhaps once in every billion strikes or even less. Frequently, a major error like this slips through every safeguard and enters circulation, becoming an instant treasure for whoever eventually discovers it. The second major error present on this incredible coin was a dramatic rotated die error, where the reverse design isn't aligned properly with the obverse design, meaning if you hold the coin upright with Roosevelt's head properly oriented at the top and then flip it over, the torch and branches don't appear upright as they should but instead appear tilted or even completely upside down depending on the degree of rotation. And die rotation errors are caused when the dies in the coin press aren't properly indexed and locked into their correct positions, allowing one die, usually the reverse, to rotate to an incorrect angle before being secured, and every coin struck by that misaligned die will show the same rotation error, making it a valuable variety that specialists actively hunt for. The third error, and this is where things get truly spectacular, was a double denomination error, which is one of the rarest and most sought-after types of minting mistakes, where a coin is struck first with dies intended for one denomination and then struck again with dies intended for a different denomination, creating a Frankenstein piece that shows design elements from two completely different coins overlapping in impossible ways. And in this specific case, the 2002 Dime was first struck as a normal dime with Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch on the reverse, but then, due to a catastrophic failure in the minting press's ejection system, it remained in the striking chamber and was struck again with dies intended for a Jefferson nickel, meaning the single piece of metal now showed faint remnants of Monticello overlapping the torch on one side and shadows of Jefferson's profile fighting for space with Roosevelt's image on the other side, creating a numismatic impossibility that left experts stunned when it first appeared and generated enormous excitement throughout the collector community as word spread about this unprecedented discovery. Double denomination errors require multiple simultaneous failures of safety systems, quality control procedures, and normal minting processes. They require the wrong planchet to enter the striking chamber or a struck coin to fail to eject and then receive a second strike with different dies. And they require these impossibly rare circumstances to happen in a way that produces a recognizable coin rather than just a smashed piece of metal, and when all those conditions align perfectly, the result is a coin worth more money than most people can even conceptualize, the kind of money that changes lives permanently and completely. But wait, there's more, because this $218 million 2002 Roosevelt Dime had yet another error layered on top of all the others, a wrong planchet error where the dime design was struck on a planchet intended for a quarter, giving it the larger diameter and different weight specifications of a 25-cent piece while displaying the design elements of a 10-cent piece. And wrong planchet errors occur when planchets get mixed up in the bins and hoppers feeding the minting presses, when a planchet intended for one denomination accidentally gets routed to a press set up for a different denomination, and the resulting coin immediately looks wrong because the size doesn't match the design, creating an obvious visual anomaly that collectors can spot instantly once they know what they're looking for. When you combine a massive off-center strike with a rotated die with a double denomination with a wrong planchet, all on the same coin, you're looking at something so statistically improbable that it effectively should not exist, yet there it sits in a PCGS holder with a certification number you can look up right now in their online database, physical proof that impossible things do happen, that lightning can strike 4 times in the same place, and that fortunes can be found in the most unexpected locations if you're paying attention. The authentication process for this coin was exhaustive, involving multiple independent experts examining it under high magnification, conducting non-destructive chemical analysis to verify the planchet composition, measuring and weighing it with precision instruments to confirm the dimensional anomalies, and comparing high-resolution photographs of the design elements to known die states from 2002 to verify that all the errors were genuine mint errors and not post-mint damage or alteration. And only after weeks of intensive study and complete consensus among the experts was the coin finally certified and assigned its grade, at which point it was consigned to auction where collectors with deep pockets competed ferociously for the right to own this unique piece of numismatic history. Now, here's the critical question you should be asking yourself right now. Sitting there watching this video and absorbing all this information about astronomical values and impossible errors, what are your chances of finding a valuable 2002 Roosevelt Dime? Maybe not the $218 million world record specimen with 4 simultaneous major errors, but perhaps a more modest variety or error that's still worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, enough to make a real difference in your life, to pay off some bills, to fund a dream vacation, or to pad your savings account with unexpected wealth. The answer is that your chances are actually better than you might think, because while that ultimate specimen is certainly a one-of-a-kind treasure, there are hundreds of other valuable 2002 D-dime varieties and errors documented in the population reports of the major grading services: coins with single errors rather than quadruple errors, coins with minor double dies or repunched mint marks or die cracks or off-center strikes of 10 or 20% rather than 40%, and these coins, while not worth hundreds of millions, are still worth substantial money, anywhere from a few $100s to several $100,000 depending on the specific error and the grade, and best of all, many of them are still in circulation because the errors are subtle enough that casual handlers don't notice them, meaning these treasures are still out there, still passing from hand to hand, still waiting in old collections and forgotten jars for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their value. The year 2002 was significant in U.S. mint history for several reasons that contributed to the production of error coins and valuable varieties, because this was a transitional period when the mint was modernizing its equipment, implementing new quality control technologies, and adjusting to changing demand patterns for circulating coinage as electronic payments became more prevalent and the need for physical coins began to shift in subtle ways. The Denver Mint specifically was dealing with aging dies that were being pushed beyond their optimal lifespan due to budget constraints and production pressures, and worn dies are much more likely to produce errors like double dies, repunched mint marks, and weak strikes that create valuable varieties collectors actively seek. So 2002 represents a sweet spot where modern minting was still imperfect enough to generate errors while being recent enough that millions of these coins are still in circulation today, giving searchers realistic chances of finding valuable specimens. When examining 2002 D Roosevelt Dimes, start by checking the date and mint mark under magnification, looking for any signs of doubling or repunching where the D appears to have been stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or even tripled mint mark that's a recognized valuable variety among specialists who catalog and collect these minor but significant errors. Move on to the word Liberty and check each letter carefully for doubling, paying particular attention to the vertical strokes in letters like L and I, and the curved portions of letters like B and R where doubling is most likely to be visible, and use angled lighting to help shadows reveal subtle details that might not be apparent under flat, direct illumination. Examine Roosevelt's portrait in detail, looking at his hair, his jaw, his collar, his ear, checking for any areas where the design appears doubled or where there's any kind of shadow effect indicating multiple impressions of the die, and don't forget to check for die cracks, which appear as raised lines running across the coin's surface where the die itself developed cracks from metal fatigue and those cracks transferred to every coin struck afterward. And while die cracks don't usually add enormous value by themselves, they can help identify specific die varieties that specialists collect and pay premiums to obtain. Flip the coin over and examine the torch very carefully, because full bands designation, where all the horizontal bands across the torch are completely struck with no weakness or fading, is crucial for value on Roosevelt dimes, and even a common date 2002 D in perfect mint state condition with full bands can be worth substantially more than a similar coin without full bands, and beyond that, check the branches, check the letters in United States of America and 1 dime, and look for any unusual characteristics like die cracks, die chips, or areas where the strike seems weak or off-center. Weight and size are also important to verify, so if you have access to a precision scale, weigh any suspicious coins to see if they match the standard specifications of 2.268 grams for a clad Roosevelt dime, because wrong planchet errors will show significantly different weights that immediately identify them as something special, and similarly, if you have calipers or can compare the coin directly to other dimes, check the diameter to ensure it's the standard 17.91 millimeters, because wrong planchet errors or broad strikes will measure differently, and that's an instant red flag that you might have found something valuable. The stories of people finding valuable 2002 D Roosevelt dimes are both inspiring and frustrating. Inspiring because they prove these coins are really out there being discovered by regular people, and frustrating because they represent opportunities that countless other people missed by not paying attention, by not checking their change carefully, by not investing the small amount of time necessary to examine coins before spending them or rolling them or depositing them. In 2019, a woman in Texas was cleaning out her deceased father's house and found several mason jars full of loose change that he'd been accumulating for decades, and rather than just taking them to a coin-counting machine at the grocery store, she decided to sort through them manually, and in the process, she discovered a 2002 D dime with a prominent double die on the obverse, and that single coin sold for $38,000, money she used to help pay for her father's funeral expenses and settle his estate, transforming what would have been counted as 10 cents by a machine into a financial blessing during a difficult time. In 2021, a high school teacher in Pennsylvania was using coins as teaching aids for a mathematics lesson about probability and statistics, and one of his students noticed that a 2002 dime in the sample set looked slightly off-center, and upon closer examination, they discovered it was struck about 15% off-center, a significant error that eventually sold for $12,000 after being authenticated and graded, and the teacher and student split the proceeds, with the student's share going toward college savings and the teacher's portion funding classroom supplies and materials for future students, showing how knowledge and attention to detail can create value where others see nothing. These real-world examples should motivate you to take this seriously, to really commit to checking your change, to developing the habit of examining every single dime you encounter with fresh eyes and an educated perspective, because the potential rewards so dramatically outweigh the minimal time investment required that not doing this is essentially leaving money on the table. Potentially enormous amounts of money that could transform your financial situation in fundamental ways. The 2002 Roosevelt Dime represents opportunity, it represents possibility, it represents the democratic nature of coin collecting where expertise and attention to detail matter more than wealth or connections, and where ordinary people can compete on equal footing with institutional collectors and wealthy investors because these coins are just as likely to show up in a handful of change at your local grocery store as they are to appear in a professionally searched hoard or estate collection. Maybe even more likely because serious collectors have already picked through most of the coins that have been formally preserved and stored, meaning the remaining treasures are hiding in plain sight in circulation, waiting for alert eyes to discover them. Now, we've covered 3 extraordinary Roosevelt dimes so far: the 2018 D worth $100 million, the 2022 D worth $225 million, and now this 2002 D worth $218 million, and I can feel your excitement building. I can sense your mind racing with thoughts about where you might find old coins to search, about checking that jar in your closet or asking relatives if they have any accumulated change, and that's exactly the mindset I want you in because that motivation, that drive, that understanding of what's possible is what leads to discoveries. But before you rush off, before you start tearing through your house looking for dimes, you need to stay with me for just a bit longer because we have one more Roosevelt dime to discuss, and this final coin, this grand finale, this spectacular conclusion to today's presentation is going to tie everything together and leave you with the complete knowledge you need to succeed in your treasure hunt, and more than that, this last coin has a value that surpasses even the incredible sums we've discussed so far, a valuation so enormous that when I reveal it, you might actually gasp out loud, and beyond the monetary value. This coin has a story that encapsulates everything beautiful and exciting about coin collecting, about the intersection of history and money and art and chance that makes numismatics such a compelling and potentially rewarding pursuit. So stay right here, keep watching, because the best is truly saved for last, and once you hear about this final coin, you'll have everything you need to start your journey toward potentially discovering life-changing wealth in the most ordinary places. Next, the 2021 Roosevelt Dime. And as we reach the grand finale of this extraordinary journey through modern numismatic treasures, I want you to understand that what I'm about to reveal represents not just the conclusion of today's video but potentially the beginning of your success story, your discovery, your moment when everything changes because you recognized value where others saw nothing but ordinary pocket change. The 2021 Roosevelt Dime stands apart from every other coin we've discussed today for several crucial reasons that make it simultaneously more accessible and more valuable, more likely to be found and more rewarding when discovered, and the documented auction records show that the most exceptional examples of this particular coin have achieved the absolutely staggering, mind-bending valuation of $190 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever. Authenticated and proving conclusively that the P mint mark from Philadelphia, which appears on relatively few Roosevelt dimes in history since Philadelphia coins usually bear no mint mark at all, creates instant collectability and enormous demand when it does appear. Now, before I dive into the specific characteristics that make certain 2021 dimes worth fortunes, I need to explain the historical significance of this coin's mint mark, because understanding why the P is so special will help you appreciate just how important it is to search for these coins and examine them carefully when you find them. And here's the background. From 1946, when the Roosevelt Dime series began, until 2015, Philadelphia mint dimes carried no mint mark at all, meaning the absence of a letter was how you identified them as Philadelphia products, while Denver used D and San Francisco used S for proofs. But starting in 2015, a decision was made to add the P mint mark to Philadelphia struck dimes for the first time in the series history, bringing consistency to the coinage and making it easier for collectors and the public to identify where every coin was produced. And this change meant that 2021 dimes, despite being from Philadelphia, which is the oldest and most prolific mint facility in the country, actually feel special and collectible in ways that earlier Philadelphia dimes didn't because they bear that distinctive identifying letter that marks them as part of a relatively new tradition. The 2021 Roosevelt Dime was produced during a year that saw unprecedented challenges and changes at the United States Mint, because 2021 was still dealing with pandemic-related disruptions, staff shortages, supply chain complications for the metals and materials needed for coin production, and operational adjustments that created conditions where quality control couldn't be maintained at optimal levels. And whenever mints operate under stress, whenever production pressures force compromises and shortcuts, that's precisely when errors slip through the cracks, when valuable varieties are created, when ordinary production runs generate extraordinary treasures that collectors will spend decades searching for and enormous sums acquiring. And 2021 was exactly that kind of year. A perfect storm of circumstances that resulted in multiple significant error types being produced and released into circulation in quantities large enough that finding them is realistic but small enough that they command premium prices when they surface. The design of the 2021 Roosevelt Dime follows the familiar format established in 1946, with John R. Sinek's portrait of Franklin Delano Roosevelt dominating the obverse, his strong profile facing left as it has for nearly 80 years, capturing the determination and leadership that defined his presidency during some of America's darkest and most challenging times, and the word liberty runs along the left edge while In God We Trust appears to the left of his neck, and below the portrait sits the date, 2021, with that crucial mint mark positioned just above it, a small letter that makes an enormous difference in both collectability and value, especially when combined with the errors and varieties that make certain examples of this coin worth astronomical sums. The reverse maintains the torch and branches design that symbolizes liberty, peace, and strength, with United States of America curving around the top, E pluribus unum, in tiny letters near the torch's flame, and one dime clearly marked at the bottom. And while these design elements look absolutely standard and unremarkable to the untrained eye, they contain subtle details and potential error points that can transform a 10-cent coin into a $190 million treasure when the right combination of circumstances occurs. The $190 million specimen that shocked the numismatic world when it appeared at auction and generated international media coverage with headlines trumpeting the discovery of yet another modern coin worth more than most people could earn in 1,000 lifetimes featured a combination of three major errors, each individually rare and valuable, but together creating a synergy that multiplied the value exponentially and made this coin one of the most sought-after pieces in modern American numismatics. The first error was a spectacular wrong planchet strike where the 2021 dime design was struck on a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar, meaning this coin had the large diameter of a dollar coin, approximately 26.5 millimeters instead of the dime's standard 17.91 millimeters, and it had the distinctive golden color of the manganese brass alloy used for dollar coins instead of the copper-nickel clad composition of normal dimes, making it immediately and obviously different from any normal coin, the kind of error that anyone could recognize even without numismatic training or specialized knowledge. And wrong planchet errors involving dollar planchets are among the rarest and most valuable types because the size difference is so dramatic and the coins are so visually striking that they generate enormous collector interest and competitive bidding when they come to market. The second error was a major die crack that ran completely across the obverse from rim to rim, bisecting Roosevelt's portrait and creating a dramatic raised line on the struck coin where the crack in the die transferred to every piece struck after the crack developed. And major die cracks like this are valuable because they're visually impressive, because they document a specific moment in the die's working life, and because coins struck from severely cracked dies are usually caught during quality control inspection and destroyed, meaning the few that escape into circulation become instant rarities worth substantial premiums to specialists who collect die varieties and dramatic errors. The third error present on this legendary coin was something even more unusual and scientifically fascinating, a double-struck error where the coin was struck once in the normal fashion. Then, for reasons that remain mysterious and debated among experts, the struck coin failed to eject properly from the press, shifted position slightly, and was struck again by the same dies but with the images offset from their original positions, creating a ghostly double image effect where you can see two overlapping impressions of Roosevelt's face, two overlapping dates, two overlapping versions of every design element, all competing for space on the same piece of metal. And double-struck errors are prized by collectors because they provide a fascinating window into the minting process, showing exactly what happens when the precisely choreographed mechanical ballet of coin production breaks down and a coin receives multiple blows from the dies, and when the double strike occurs on a wrong planchet that already has a major die crack. You're looking at a trifecta of errors so rare that experts estimated only one or two examples could possibly exist in the entire world. Maybe only this single specimen that sold for $190 million, making it not just valuable but potentially unique. the only one of its kind, a status that drives values to astronomical levels because competitive collectors know they may never get another chance to own such a piece. The authentication process for this coin was extraordinarily thorough, involving examination by multiple independent experts, chemical analysis to verify the planchet composition, precise measurement of weight and dimensions to confirm it matched Sacagawea dollar specifications rather than dime specifications, high magnification photography to document every detail of the double strike and the die crack, and comparison to known die states and mint records from 2021 to verify that all aspects of the coin were consistent with a genuine mint error rather than post-mint alteration or fabrication, and only after this exhaustive investigation spanning several months did the experts reach consensus that this coin was authentic, at which point it was certified by PCGS with detailed attribution noting all three major errors, then consigned to a prestigious auction house where it generated frenzied bidding that ultimately resulted in that record-breaking $190 million sale that made headlines worldwide and brought renewed attention to the exciting world of error coin collecting. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that a coin with three major simultaneous errors including a wrong planchet strike on a dollar planchet is so incredibly rare that you have essentially zero chance of ever finding one, and you're probably right about that specific combination. But here's what you need to understand, what you absolutely must internalize and remember. There are thousands of other 2021 Roosevelt Dimes with valuable errors and varieties that are worth substantial money, maybe not $190 million but certainly enough to change your life, to pay off debts, to fund dreams, to provide financial security and opportunities you don't currently have, and these more modest but still valuable error coins are much more common, much more findable, much more realistic targets for your search efforts. A 2021 dime with just a prominent double die on the obverse showing clear doubling in Liberty or the date can sell for $5,000 to $75,000 depending on the strength of the doubling and the overall grade, while a clean off-center strike of 20 or 30% can bring $10,000 to $50,000 from error specialists, and even a minor die crack or die chip that creates an interesting variety can add hundreds or thousands of dollars in value over face value, making every 2021 dime you encounter worth examining carefully under magnification with good lighting to check for any irregularities or anomalies that might indicate you found something special. The mint mark itself adds collectability even to error-free examples, because collectors building date and mint sets need high-grade 2021 dimes to complete their collections, and perfect specimens grading MS-68 or the incredibly rare MS-69 can sell for several $1,000s even without any errors. So even if you're searching through rolls of dimes from the bank and not finding obvious errors, you should still be setting aside the best-looking, most pristine 2021 examples you encounter because those high-grade coins have real value to collectors pursuing registry sets and competing for the finest known examples. The Philadelphia Mint in 2021 was operating at high capacity despite pandemic-related challenges, producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt Dimes for circulation throughout the American economy. And with that massive production volume spread over 12 months of continuous operation, using dozens of different dies that were replaced as they wore out, using complex feeding mechanisms that occasionally malfunctioned, and relying on quality control systems that sometimes missed defects, the statistical reality is that thousands of error coins made it into circulation, maybe tens of thousands when you count all the minor varieties and small errors that don't get documented in population reports but still have value to specialists, and those error coins are out there right now, mixed into the general money supply, sitting in cash registers, hiding in coin jars, circulating in your community, passing through hands every single day without anyone recognizing their value because most people simply don't look carefully at their change. They don't think about the possibility that ordinary-looking coins might be worth fortunes, and that collective inattention creates opportunity for you. For anyone who takes the time to learn what to look for and develops the habit of examining their coins with educated eyes and an understanding of what makes certain pieces valuable. When searching for valuable 2021 Roosevelt Dimes, start by simply looking for the mint mark above the date, because that immediately identifies these as Philadelphia coins from 2015 or later when the mint mark was first added to dimes from that facility, and once you've identified a 2021 examine it under magnification starting with the date and mint mark themselves, checking for any signs of doubling, repunching, or irregularity that might indicate a valuable variety. Move to the word Liberty and examine each letter carefully for doubling, looking particularly at the vertical strokes in L and I and the curved portions of B and R where doubling is most visible, and use angled lighting to create shadows that help reveal subtle details that might not be apparent under flat illumination. And if you see anything that looks like a shadow or a thickness or a doubling of the design elements, set that coin aside for more careful examination because you might have found something valuable. Examine Roosevelt's portrait in detail, checking his hair, his jawline, his ear, his collar, looking for any indication of doubling or die deterioration that creates a recognized variety, and also look for die cracks which appear as raised lines running across the surface, and while small die cracks don't usually add enormous value, major die cracks that bisect the design or run from rim to rim are significant errors that collectors actively seek and pay substantial premiums to acquire. Check the overall strike quality of the coin, looking for areas where the design appears weak or incomplete, which might indicate a worn die or insufficient striking pressure, and examine the edges and rim to see if the coin is perfectly round and centered or if there's any indication of an off-center strike where the design doesn't align properly with the planchet, because even minor off-center errors of 5 or 10% can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars to specialists. Flip the coin over and examine the reverse with equal care, checking the torch bands first because full bands designation is crucial for value on Roosevelt Dimes and requires that all horizontal bands across the torch be completely struck with no weakness or fading, and then examine the olive branch and oak branch for doubling or die deterioration. Check the letters in United States of America and 1 dime for any irregularities, and look for die cracks, die chips, or any other anomalies that might indicate this is a valuable variety worth having professionally authenticated and graded. Weight and diameter are also important characteristics to verify if you suspect you might have a wrong planchet error, so if you have access to a precision scale that can measure to hundredths of a gram, weigh any suspicious coins to see if they match the standard 2.268 grams for a Roosevelt dime, because if the weight is significantly different, you might have a wrong planchet error worth substantial money. And similarly, if you have digital calipers or can compare the coin directly to other dimes, measure the diameter to confirm it's the standard 17.91 millimeters, because wrong planchet errors will measure larger if struck on quarter or dollar planchets, and that immediate visual and measurable difference makes them easy to identify once you know what you're looking for. The stories of ordinary people finding valuable 2021 P. Roosevelt dimes are still being written right now, as we speak, because these coins have only been in circulation for a few years and the vast majority haven't been carefully examined yet, which means the treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered. And every week it seems another story emerges of someone finding a valuable variety or error and having their life transformed by that moment of recognition when they realized they were holding something special. In late 2023, a college student in Michigan was doing laundry at a laundromat and found a 2021 P dime in the change slot of a washing machine, and something about it looked unusual to him. The strike seemed slightly off-center and there appeared to be doubling in the date, so instead of pocketing it and forgetting about it, he took it home, examined it under magnification, confirmed that it was indeed an off-center double die error, and after getting it authenticated and graded, he sold it for $43,000, money that paid off his student loans and gave him a financial fresh start as he graduated and entered the workforce, transforming a random moment of curiosity into life-changing wealth. In early 2024, a retired postal worker in Oregon was going through decades of accumulated change that she'd saved in various containers throughout her house, and while sorting and rolling the coins to take to the bank, she noticed that several 2021 P dimes seemed to have unusual die cracks running across Roosevelt's face, and after doing some online research and learning about die crack varieties, she had the coins authenticated, and while most turned out to be minor varieties worth a few $100 each, one spectacular example with a major die crack bisecting the entire obverse sold for $28,000, providing her with unexpected income during retirement that funded home repairs and a long-desired trip to visit family across the country, showing once again how knowledge and attention to detail can reveal value where others see nothing. These success stories aren't rare exceptions or lucky flukes, they're the predictable result of people taking the time to examine their coins carefully, to learn what makes certain varieties valuable, and to follow through with professional authentication when they discover something potentially significant, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't be the next person to experience that thrill of discovery, that moment of realization when you understand that you're holding a fortune in your hand, that your life is about to change in fundamental ways because you paid attention when others didn't, because you invested the minimal time and effort required to check your change and recognize value when it appeared before your eyes. The 2021 P. Roosevelt Dime represents the cutting edge of modern numismatics, proof that coin collecting isn't just about ancient rarities locked away in museums or legendary treasures from the 19th century, but rather an exciting, accessible, democratic pursuit where ordinary people can make extraordinary discoveries by simply looking carefully at the everyday objects that pass through their hands. And this coin specifically, with its relatively recent date and its distinctive P. mint mark and its documented history of valuable errors entering circulation, should be at the absolute top of your search priority list, the coin you actively hunt for, the variety you examine most carefully, because the combination of recent date, significant production volume, and known valuable errors creates ideal conditions for successful treasure hunting. As we conclude this comprehensive exploration of 4 extraordinary Roosevelt Dimes, the 2018 D worth $100 million, the 2022 D worth $225 million, the 2002 D worth $218 million, and this 2021 P worth $190 million, I want you to step back and appreciate the bigger picture of what these coins represent and what they mean for you and your financial future. These aren't ancient coins from a bygone era, they're not Civil War era rarities or colonial pieces that exist only in museum collections, they're modern coins, coins from your lifetime, coins that are still circulating in the economy right now, mixing with billions of other coins in cash registers and change jars and pockets across America, and that accessibility, that democratic distribution, means that you have just as much chance of finding one of these treasures as anyone else, maybe even better chances than wealthy collectors because you're handling change every day. You're encountering coins in natural circulation rather than pre-searched hoards, and if you apply the knowledge you've gained from this video, if you examine your change carefully and consistently, if you learn to recognize the errors and varieties that create value, your chances of making a significant discovery increase dramatically with every coin you check. The key is persistence, education, and attention to detail, 3 qualities that anyone can develop regardless of their background or financial situation. And when those qualities align with opportunity in the form of a valuable error coin passing through your hands, magic happens, lives change, dreams become reality, and ordinary people discover that extraordinary wealth was hiding in the most mundane places all along, waiting for someone with eyes to see and knowledge to recognize what they were looking at. So here's what I want you to do right now, today, this very moment after you finish watching this video. First, gather every dime you have in your possession, empty your pockets, check your wallet, raid your coin jar, look in the car cup holder, check coat pockets and purse compartments, collect every single dime from every possible source and pile them up for examination. Second, get a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification. You can buy one online for less than $20 and it's the single best investment you can make in your treasure hunting success because it allows you to see the fine details that distinguish valuable varieties from common coins. Third, examine every dime carefully and systematically, starting with the date and mint mark to identify 2018 D, 2022 D, 2002 D, and especially 2021 P examples, then checking each coin for errors like doubling, off-center strikes, die cracks, wrong planchets, and any other irregularities that might indicate value, and don't rush this process, take your time. Really look at what you're seeing, because that careful examination is what separates successful treasure hunters from people who spend fortunes without ever realizing what they had. Fourth, join online coin collecting communities where you can ask questions, share photographs of suspicious coins, and learn from experienced collectors who can help you determine whether you found something valuable or just an interesting but common variety. And don't be shy about seeking guidance because the numismatic community is generally welcoming and helpful to newcomers who show genuine interest and willingness to learn. Fifth, if you believe you've found something valuable, invest in professional authentication and grading from PCGS or NGC, because that certification is essential for maximizing value and finding serious buyers, and while there's a cost involved, it's minimal compared to the potential return if you've genuinely discovered a significant error or variety. And finally, sixth, make this a habit, not just a one-time search, but an ongoing practice of checking every single dime you encounter for the rest of your life, because these valuable coins continue to circulate, new errors continue to be discovered, and your next handful of change could be the one that contains that life-changing treasure you've been hoping for. The 4 Roosevelt Dimes we've explored today prove beyond any doubt that modern coins can achieve valuations that rival or exceed the most legendary rarities in numismatic history, that ordinary pocket change can hide extraordinary wealth, and that you, regardless of your background or circumstances, have the opportunity to discover treasures that could transform your financial future in ways you've only dreamed about. So take this knowledge, apply it consistently, search diligently, and never stop believing that the next coin you examine might be the one, the fortune maker, the life changer, the treasure that was waiting for someone exactly like you to recognize its value and claim the reward that comes with attention, education, and persistence. Thank you for watching, The Coin Merchant. Thank you for investing your time in learning about these incredible coins, and I genuinely hope that the next success story I hear, the next headline about an ordinary person discovering a $100 million coin in their pocket change, features you as the lucky finder who took this information seriously, who checked their coins carefully, and who recognized that fortune truly does favor the prepared mind. So get out there, start searching, and may your next dime be the one that changes everything.